According to Adcorp, South Africa's labour productivity reached a 46-year low in July. Since 1967, labour productivity has declined 32.5%. Employment also stalled in July, growing at an annualised rate of just 0.23%. For more, we're joined from Cape Town by Michael Bagram, labour lawyer at Bagram's Attorneys. Michael, I'm waiting for the day that we have some positive news flow on our labour force here in South Africa and we can chat to you about that positivity, but really everything's going in the wrong direction, isn't it?
Well, not entirely. Yes, we are going in the wrong direction, and when you see manufacturing down like we've seen now from the Adcorp response, that's bad news. Look, there is some good news. I mean, as you know, the strike numbers are pretty good at the moment. It's the best we've had in ages. And then, of course, what's interesting is that we see that the informal sector employment has been, it's the 13th consecutive month rise in the informal sector, which says a lot about the labour laws, because people are trying to avoid the labour laws and go into informal employment.
Michael, how do they measure that labour productivity number? Is it, I mean, South Africa is going more and more services, so how can you predict or account for the labour numbers?
Yeah, what Adcorp are doing is they're looking at the production, the real output per worker, which has been rising considerably since the 60s, and then since about 1973 it seems to be going down, and they look at the productivity, what the average worker is actually producing. It's not a scientific way of looking at this. They're putting their own formula together and they're looking at the output per worker definition of labour productivity. It's probably the best we can do in the circumstances.
Michael, we live in a country where the stats are perhaps a bit dodgy, to say the least, and possibly here's an example of a sort of disconnect between what the official numbers are telling us and what the economy is actually experiencing. Do you have any thoughts around that, possibly?
Yeah, what is actually happening, and we're seeing this all the time, and especially with small business, is that in fact businesses are seeing the productivity drop and they're refusing to invest more and more into workers, and you're seeing that, and our government has come out with those statistics that most businesses today are not investing any further because they're not getting the production that they expected to get, and that's created a real problem. So the Adcorp figures, although it's not scientific, are actually reflecting the truth.
Michael, are South Africans lazy, or is it just that we're unskilled and haven't got the skills to improve productivity? Where does it lie? You know, do we only work 2 hours a day, or take off Friday as a holiday in between, have a long weekend? You know, how do we turn this around?
I think it's going to be a long haul. It starts with education, obviously, and education is the essence of it, and it's the skills. We still, and I know that many of my clients in business are still importing people into South Africa with skills, which is a tragedy because we should be using our own people. That's the first problem. We then got the tail wagging the dog. We got COSATU wagging the government, and yes, we do have probably the highest number of public holidays in the world, and yes, part of the wage negotiations, we're seeing the unions pushing for less and less hours, so it's a problem.
Well, moving on, a worker reporting for duty has been killed at one of Lonmin's South African mines. That's shortly after 2 security guards were hacked to death in new violence between rival unions, while a South African police officer has also been killed as authorities try to quell violence at the mine. Lonmin officials say the clash was between the dominant National Union of Mine Workers and the upstart Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union. Lonmin's stock closed down just over 1% to R94.53. And Michael, this trend of inter-union violence, what does it say about where we are as a country right now?
No, that's bad news, because if you couple this with the productivity that we've just been speaking about, you're really looking at problems. The inter-union rivalry, and especially in the platinum industry, is not new. AMCU, the new union on the block, in fact is rising at a considerable rate, and they're probably 50% of the platinum workers have joined AMCU. Now, the real issue they've got here is that COSATU, which is the umbrella body representing most of the majority unions, is slowly losing sight of bread and butter issues on the shop floor. And the real problem that we've got on the shop floor is that people are looking at their wages, looking at productivity, they're looking at all sorts of labor law issues, and COSATU seems to have lost the plot. And when they start losing members to new unions such as AMCU, then they get violent. And we've seen this violence now at 2 of the platinum mines. And if anything, platinum is dropping in price anyway. We can ill afford it, and this country can ill afford it. And this is just bad news. You've seen what happened with Xstrata that owns 25% of Lonmin. They're starting, their figures have dropped quite radically. So we're losing value as well. It's something that this country can ill afford.
Michael, thanks so much for sharing your opinions with us. Michael Bagram from Bagram Attorneys.